have a look at how you can make your torch body in Onshape. So here is a nice ergonomic shape that I've drawn in Onshape. It has holes for my switch and a hole for my LED ready for me to either mill out or vacuum form once I've done a milling out of the mould. Okay, so how do we start this off? Let's start off with a new Part Studio. So on the plus sign, create Part Studio. For you, it would probably be a new document. Okay. I'm going to start by working on my top work plane. So I'm going to select that and then select New Sketch. I'm going to press N on my keyboard so I'm looking straight at it. Now, in order to draw out the shape correctly in the right space, I'm going to draw a construction rectangle first. So I'm going to use, from the drop-down list, I'm going to choose my center point rectangle, not the corner rectangle, but the center point rectangle, okay, there. And I'm also going to switch on my construction lines there. So these two are both selected. Then starting from the center, I'm going to drag out a frame. Now you can see here the lines are dotted, which is what I want. I want these as construction lines. Now the size of your block is 75mm by 150mm. Okay, so I've got nearly 75 by 159 there. So I'm going to click that. The white box has highlighted here. Remember, you don't click on that, you just type in the value that you want. So 75, press enter, it moves to the next box, 150, press enter, and there we have the size of the block that you're going to be using to cut your design out of. Okay? Right, I'm going to use my spline tool for the next part. Make sure your construction line is turned off. So we're just on the spline tool. And now I know that I've got to fit it within this space. So rather like we did with our drawings, we're going to draw out the shape of our torch body. Now we're just going to roughly sort of plot points where that's going to go. Remember, you can move these afterwards, so don't worry too much if they're not quite in the right place. So I'm going to do some finger bits here. Okay, like so. You can get around to about there. That's fine. Click. Okay, now there's my shape for me. Okay, let's zoom in. So we can see we've got a reasonable shape there, but it's not quite right yet. There are a few bits that I wanted to change on it. So if I just deselect the spline tool, I can then move on and I can then grab any of these handles and I can pull them about until I get them to be the right place. So this one I might move up a little bit. This one I might move down a little bit. Yeah, that's looking a bit better. I want a little bit more control on some parts here. So this bit here, I need another point to be able to drag this out. So if I go back to the spline tool here and I click on the drop-down list, there's a thing saying spline control point, add a spline control point. So I'm going to move to just this part here, click, and that will give me another control point there. I'm going to deselect this tool first, and then I can actually drag this one to give some more control to my line. Okay. When I'm happy with my shape, bearing in mind that I can come back and edit this at any time, yeah, when I'm happy with my shape, I'm then going to extrude it. So I'm going to go to my extrusion tool here, extrude. Okay. Now by default, that has raised up by 25mm. 25mm. I only want it to be 20mm, so that's going to be a nice size for me. And I'm also going to make sure I have a draft to it. Now the draft is what we need for vacuum forming, so that we have a taper to the side of it. Now that by default that's tapering outwards, we want it to go inwards, so there. And instead of it being 3 degrees, it's going to be 5 degrees for us. Okay. Okay. That will bring that in. You can see where the original line was and where it's tapered into there. Okay. Green tick that, and there I have my shape drawn out. Now, if I decide that it's not quite what I envisaged, I can go back to my sketch, open that up again, and I can move a control point if I decide that it's not quite the way I wanted it. There we go. And then it will redraw to the shape I want. Now, you probably also want to have a chamfer going around the edge of this. So I'm going to click on my fillet tool rather than the chamfer. I'm going to click on the top surface there. And that should, if it can create it, should create a fillet going around it. There we are. Now I've got my radius at 5mm. If you find that your drawing is very complicated and it's not quite doing it, it's turning red, and try reducing the radius down to a smaller value. Okay. until it's gone, until it's worked. That green tick, and there I have a nice little shape there. Okay, now I want to imagine this as a shell. So I'm going to just draw. I'm going to turn it all the way around. I'm going to grab the underside of it, like so. And I'm going to go to my shell tool here, shell, there. And I'm going to come in by 1 to 1 millimeter, not 2.5, 1 millimeter, because I know the acrylic, the hips that we're using is 1 mil thick. That would be more realistic for our thing. There we are. There's a nice shell shape there. Okay, that's looking a bit more like our torch body. Okay, so what about holes? Well, I might want to have on this side here my switch, and my LED I think is probably going to go about here somewhere. But your design may change. So I want to put a hole through here. Now, I've got a work plane here, which is my right work plane. So I'm going to grab my plane tool here, and I'm going to add a new work plane that's going to be based on this. It's going to be offset from it. And the distance is going to have to be offset is at least outside the thickness or the width of our shape there. So about there should be okay, right? So that's about 36 millimeters. Green tick. And there we have that there. And I'm going to put a sketch on this. So I'm going to click on that one, click on sketch, press N so I'm looking straight at it. And I want to put a 7mm hole about here, which is where my switch is going to go. So I'm going to take my circle drawing tool, find somewhere about there, drag out a circle, set the diameter to 7mm, click, and there's a 7mm hole. I can remove it later on if I want to, but let's try and actually extrude through. I'm going to take my extrusion tool. Now remember this is going to be a hole, so I'm going to remove. So remove, okay. You can see that's already started to remove through, but we don't necessarily need it to be as deep as this. By default it's 25mm again. So let's just take this back so it's just coming through the shell so it doesn't interfere with anything else that happens to be inside our shape. There, that should be enough. Okay, and now I've got a hole for my switch to go through. Right, let's have a look at on the other side here. So I want to put something for my LED here. So again I'm going to click on my right work plane, click on the plane drawing tool there, create an offset to this, but this time it's going to go in the other direction. So it goes on the other way. So it's the new one here. Distance has to be outside the shape. You might need to just have a look so you're looking that way on the shape there so you can see it. There we are. So move a little bit closer, about there somewhere. That's fine. Okay. Green tick. Well, so I've got a new work plane here. Click on that. Click on my new sketch. So that's on that work plane. On there. Okay. And press N so I'm looking straight at it. Take my circle drawing tool. I want my LED to come out about here. I'm going to draw a little circle here. This is going to be 5mm for my LED. Okay, there. And we'll extrude that one as well. And this is going to be removed. Now, so that's going the opposite direction. So I've got to go that way. And I only need it to go in about, let's say, 10mm there. And now I've got a hole for my LED there. There we go. So I've got plenty of room in my body for my battery to go in. I've got a hole for my switch, and I've got a hole for my LED. I'm going to press P to hide all my work plane, zoom out so I can see what I've got there. And there I've got my torch body ready to go. Okay, looking forward to seeing yours.